Ivy Nation Sports Talk. Welcome to a brand new week, along with Vince DeDario. I'm Sean Stiers. Hope you're having a good one so far today. I remembered to hit the music coming into this show today, unlike end of last week.
Whatever, it's all good.
I know
it's all good. I went to take a drink right before we started, and I don't know if you have this issue at your house. You have a lot less females, but you do have females in your house.
Yes,
just a long hair. Just okay, we'll put that over there.
Yeah, I love it when I do discover the rare long hair in my house, and I obviously automatically know where it comes from.
Right,
not exactly from here.
I mean, I have 3 teenage daughters. Well, technically 2, but 1 in a month. So I'll have 3 in a month, and then of course my lovely wife, and they all have long hair. So it's everywhere, man. Like we're outnumbered. So it is what it is.
Yep. Well, we start a new week. DK setting the standards high. This show better be good. My neighbor invited me to a second grade talent show, and I told him I had previous plans.
The bar's not super high.
All right.
So, I mean, let's go. Let's roll here. But yeah, I'll tell you what. I was reminded today as we sit here doing a live YouTube, video and a podcast on our laptops in our basements or / offices. I was reminded how dependent we are on technology because it was all shut down at my day job today because of some ransomware, some thieves jumping in, and everything was shut down. So it was a challenge today, not having things at my fingertips and information that I needed. And yeah, it was wild. And then the fire alarm went off too. So it was awesome. It's fantastic. It was a great day.
Good times.
It's a great day. It's a great day.
Mike said he read a report that BMO, Benjamin Morrison, is coming back. Is that true?
That is not true.
I don't know where you would have seen that. I don't know if maybe he was old I mean, he was at the combine, obviously.
Correct.
He is declared for the draft.
He can't come back now. Yeah. Like that ship has sailed, and he is not coming back. And I saw that someplace else somebody had mentioned that, and that's your classic clickbait right there, my friend. And I'm sure we all would love for that to be the case, but that is not happening, unfortunately. So he is well on his way to the NFL.
Mark said I got some TV time yesterday next to Big Game. It's actually Karen, not Kate. Yes. Does she like that nickname? I've never actually broken it out in person for her. But
so what they did, I don't know. Are you aware of how this went down?
I saw the camera to my left.
Yes.
And I didn't know exactly what they were doing. And so I don't know. I can't remember what was going on the floor, but I do remember there was a small monitor to my right, and by the time I looked at it, it looked like only she was on it. I didn't see myself.
It was like, hey, there's Sean's profile.
No, so it was the side of my mug, huh?
It was. Great. I mean, it was like right here. Like it was.
Was my good side?
Of course. They're both your good side.
So what were they talking about? I had no idea what was going on.
They were just talking about Notre Dame alum, that played for the team that were in the house, essentially. And then when they talked about her, they talked about the fact that, she also donated money for the head coaching position, stuff like that. But it was basically, they were showing people that were in the house that were former players and things like that. So
yeah, I think it was at halftime, maybe, or no, it was right after the game.
It was right. I think it was right after. Yeah.
I think right after the game, there was like a big group photo that they did. There were a lot of alums.
Yeah,
they were scattered all over the place.
Look at Sean Stiers, I see
him. Yeah.
So, because we were watching here at the house, and we noticed you.
That was kind of my point, Salty. I don't know that there technically is a good side.
Yeah, so. It was definitely not meant to get you,
especially not in profile.
It did got you. Like you were up close and personal. It's a good thing you took care of those nose hairs that morning.
I guess so. Any ear hairs would have been covered because I had the headsets on.
This is true. This is true. But no, they were talking about her. But good game though. Good game. I mean,
it was.
I bet on women's basketball for the first time ever.
Really?
On that day, and they let me down, but that's okay. The spread was a little large for my liking, but I took it anyway. Because that's the only thing you could take was like money line or the spread. And
what was the spread?
17.5.
Oh yeah, and they kind of gave up. They gave up those 7 points at the end of the
They were
game.
up 18.
I know.
With 53 seconds left.
And you're thinking you've got it made.
I was like, this, they just gotta hold on. And then that weird turnover. It's like they handed the ball to Louisville and just said, just go score a layup. And at that point, I knew it was over. But then, of course, they hit the three just to dagger it for me.
Right.
Yeah. So all you had to do was hold on. 53 seconds. Don't get scored on. And
well, it was during that flurry. Was that when they showed Muffet doing this?
Yes.
Was it kind of?
Yes, that was right towards the end there. Yeah.
I think I said on the air that, because again, they showed Muffet on the little screen that I saw, and like she looked like it was like a 5-point game, rather than
right. Right. I was definitely nervous because I think it was an 8-point game at halftime. But that third quarter, man, they just took control of that game. I was feeling really good at that point. Because I think they were up 18, I think, at the end of the third quarter. I was like, just don't let them score more than you in the fourth quarter. We're good. But
got it up to 21. It kind of stayed, it got a little and then they pushed it back up again. And
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I was watching with intent.
We'll talk more about that. Where they are now, going to the ACC tournament and all that kind of stuff. And rapid fire. We got a slew of stuff that we're going to get to in rapid fire, but Vince, I think people want to talk quarterbacks.
They probably do. It's going to be a hot topic, I think, from now until, September, or what is it? August 31st, I think, is the first game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's that Sunday. So, yeah.
Spring is 2 weeks away, and,
crazy.
Guys went down to the combine last week and kind of they were trying to generate some content, like they were asking Riley Leonard, who does he think is going to be the guy? They're asking Bo Collins, and it's like I read some of it, like because some of it was tweeted on, online as well. And honestly, if any of those comments were like had any real insight, I probably would have used them and played a soundbite or two.
Right,
but
right.
We're not going to have any sound bites today. It's
it was all word salady.
You're trying, like if you put that in a headline, okay, you did your job. You probably got somebody to, literal clickbait. You did, you got somebody to click. What's Riley Leonard? What's Bo Collins? Think about who's going to be the guy.
Yeah, nobody was like, "Yep, this is my guy. This is my ride or die. This is who I hope gets it." Like you didn't get anything like that, and I would imagine that the person asking the question wasn't anticipating getting anything like that. But they got nothing from any of the people that they talked to. They got nothing, and I would expect as much with these guys. I mean, they're all very well polished, speakers at this point. They pretty much speak every week.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to be blindsided with a softball question like, who do you want to win the quarterback competition? I mean,
tell us about, who you think it's, like, what do you think of the great qualities of each guy and, whatever else. So I don't know. We know who the three guys are, though.
We do. It's
Steve
a 3-man
Angeli,
race.
Kenny Minchey, CJ Carr. Are you ready to kind of like get this rumble going here? Like, are you where are you on it? Like, are you excited about the fact that we've got, a quarterback derby?
I am excited about the future of what the Notre Dame's offense is going to look like, no matter who the quarterback is going to be, because it's going to be different than it was last year, right? I think we can all at least agree on that. So I'm very excited about the direction of the offense, and I'm excited about the competition. I'm excited about the race. I am not excited to deal with some of the extra that comes with that race. How about that? Is that the best way to put it?
Yeah.
I have no problem talking about it, getting
because everyone's going to have their take.
Yes.
And they're typically like everyone's take on this is a fairly strong one. Like
it really is
the fan takes on this. Like everyone's got their guy, they're behind their guy, and they're not budging an inch. Right? It's
correct. And there's like it feels. I don't want to talk about politics because that's not the direction I want to go.
No, that's
in,
actually what I was thinking.
Political.
It's almost like, it's almost like the political stuff.
Yes.
Like you're never going to budge off who your guy is.
Correct. If you are on one side or the other of the aisle politically, like at this point in our nation, you're not going to get anybody to move their stance, no matter what happens. Like, no matter what, literally no matter what happens, they're not moving their stance, period. Right. That's how I feel about this quarterback race. If you've got a dog in the fight and you are a pro Kenny Minchey or a pro Steve Angeli or a pro CJ Carr, doesn't matter. I don't know that there's a whole lot of room for people moving off of those guys at this point. Now, once a starter is named and they prove to be successful, whoever that is, then people will start coming over. Just like there were some people that were encamped in the Steve Angeli side of things when Riley Leonard got the job, right? And we all knew Riley Leonard was going to get the job, but there was still a lot of Steve Angeli. Once Riley Leonard started playing well and started leading this team to victories and like that kind of stuff, I felt like that lessened. You know what I mean? Like it was loud after week 2, but then about a month later, we weren't really hearing it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like with the interceptions and losing to Northern Illinois, obviously, the anti-Riley got pretty loud.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There were still a lot of non-believers, deep into the season. And it really, I think, it just all fell off a ledge once they started advancing in the playoffs.
Correct.
Then he fully got everybody behind him. And even then, there were some, people still wanted a guy that was going to be throw the ball downfield and whatever else. But
the Angeli people just got quieter. I don't think they moved off of their guy. They just realized they'd be spitting in the wind, basically.
There were, you remember some, now it wasn't loud, but there were, after Angeli came in at the end of the first half, to let him to a field goal at the end of the first half against Penn State. Sure. There were like, why didn't, should you leave him in there? Why didn't they leave him in there? Do you think there's a chance, like if he struggles in the championship game, are they going to bench Riley Leonard and go to Steve Angeli? No, none of that was ever going to happen. No, I'm sorry.
That's my favorite.
But yeah, it's there. I feel like this is just as good as obviously getting to the national championship game was with Riley Leonard or whoever the quarterback was. That was obviously very good for the program. I feel like this finally now, like they gave it a shot with Tyler Buckner in year 1 before he got hurt. And you can probably second guess that to whatever extent and say, well, maybe, should they have gone to the portal at that point? That's all bygones at this point, obviously, because we're going to year 4 now. But like, to me, it feels like for the program and the ability for Marcus Freeman to keep the program going forward, this is a really good thing for Notre Dame to finally have your homegrown quarterback taking the helm, a guy who was recruited by Notre Dame, signed by Notre Dame. Each of these guys now will be in the program for at least 2 years. I guess CJ Carr, like a year plus or whatever. He's been around for a year, but the other guys have obviously been around for a couple of years. Carr's at least going into year 2, but all 3 of these guys have been around for multiple years. So I feel like this is nothing but a good thing for the program that they're finally going to have a homegrown guy who will be the starter one way or the other, no matter who emerges out of this thing.
Well, and it's, it's good for the program for a lot of different reasons, right? It's one less thing that, other recruiters can use against Notre Dame. It's like, well, look, why would you go to Notre Dame? They're just going to go to the portal for another quarterback. You know what I mean? Or whatever argument that they were using. The development at quarterback has been a question mark at Notre Dame for what? A decade and a half? Honestly, like we've been talking about the lack of development by a Notre Dame quarterback for a long time. It's like guys come in, this is where they are, and they kind of stay here their entire tenure at Notre Dame, right? Is anybody going to say that Ian Book got better as the years went on? I don't think he got better. think he stayed pretty much the same.
Yeah, I think he hit a ceiling, and it was pretty much the same for a couple of years. Yeah,
he was the most, in my opinion, he was the most dynamic in year one. To be perfectly honest, when he came in 2018,
probably was.
I think he was the most dynamic then. And then, again, accumulated all of those wins, and he's the all-time leading, winner and all of that stuff. And that's great. But I don't think anybody in their right analytical mind would say he got better, right? And I think you could say that about a lot of the quarterbacks under the last tenure, right? Under Brian Kelly. I don't think they got better. So development has been a thing, right? So now it's time to see, okay, is there going to be quarterback development under Marcus Freeman / Gino Guidugli, Mike Denbrock, all of the guys on the offensive side? Is there development? Are guys getting better within Notre Dame's program from start to finish? That's still a question mark right now, I think. And they're going to at least be able to somewhat answer those questions here moving forward. And I think that's important for this program on all fronts, right? And I'm glad the portal is there as an option, right? But I'm also glad that the front runners are not portal guys. They're guys that started at Notre Dame and hopefully will finish there as well.
Yeah, and again, it's just such a big part of your program. Like transfers are because of where the transfer portal is now. Transfers are going to be pretty much a big part of everybody's program. But again, I think like look at even. I think it's fairly interesting that both teams that played in the national championship game last year had transfer portal quarterbacks.
True.
Now, Ohio State's a little bit different, obviously, because in the couple years before, obviously, Will Howard and then McCord, you've got guys like Stroud and Justin Field, both obviously drafted up at the top of the NFL draft. But even they had to use a portal quarterback next year. But I mean, again, for
Fields was a portal quarterback.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about that. Even I think that was even before there was technically, before it was technically called a portal, but at the same time, yeah, you're right. I forgot about that fact. I'm like,
the only reason I remember that is from that stupid reality show, QB1 or whatever it was called, where they followed these high school quarterbacks because he went to Georgia first, because I believe he's from Georgia. And obviously it didn't work out. And so he left. So it's the only reason I remember that, because he was on that show.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, that leaves you with Stroud, obviously. But, I mean, they've obviously been able to hit on a lot of different quarterbacks. Look at
100%.
Michigan. No matter what you think of J.J. McCarthy, he still won a national championship, and he was still drafted high in the NFL draft last year. And it just, to be a consistently elite program, you need to be able, to have more hits than misses at the quarterback position specifically to really be able to consistently stay at that kind of level, that next level.
Well, with all the changes in college football, the thing that remains the same is that you need to have a good quarterback, right? I mean, at the very least, you need a guy that's going to be a game manager. And again, that's not a negative knock on somebody, but you need somebody that's going to be able to distribute the football, across the board to your athletes. You need to make like AJ McCarron, right? Like somebody along those lines. You need somebody that's going to be able to lead the offense or the team if you want to be great. And that's what remains the same and will continue to remain the same. And so whether you home grow that guy or whether you find that guy in the portal or whatever the case may be, you still need a great quarterback, not a good quarterback. You need a great quarterback, at least a great college quarterback, to win a national championship. And, I would say good to great, right? I'd say Will Howard falls in that good to great category, more closer to good than great. And that's fine. But he did enough, right? Because he knew he had weapons and he found those weapons,
there's enough talent around him. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, you still need that. And again, whether you home grow that or whether you find it in the portal, it needs to be done. I'm happy. I would rather have you home grow that. And so now, as a Notre Dame fan, as a Notre Dame analyst, you can sit back, we can watch the development of these three guys, see where they're at. But at the end of the day, we know there's going to be a homegrown quarterback at the helm of this team in 2025. That's exciting.
I think so too. And I'm trying to figure out what's this going to look like this spring, because it's one thing when you've got two guys battling for the job. I mean, you just split the reps as close to 50-50 as you can, but 3 feels like
it's tough.
That makes things pretty interesting just in terms of how you're going to divvy all that up. I don't know if you ever had anything like that when you were an offensive coordinator, in high school, but like what do you think it looks like?
It's going to be tough, to be honest with you. Look, we never had 3 guys that were talented enough to all be competing with each other. I can tell you
that's true. Because like in high school, there's typically like
there's a pecking order,
pretty obvious guy, right?
Yes.
Either you've got a bunch of guys who you're like, how are we going to get through this season?
Correct.
Or there is a clear cut guy at the top,
and it feels like more often than not, it's the other one where you're like, oh my god, who's going to take snaps for us? But I think in this regard, it's going to be very difficult. Like I don't know if they're going to be. Each guy gets first team reps one day, or, quarterbacks 1, 2, and 3, right? Whatever that doesn't mean starter, second, whatever, right? But one guy takes first team reps, one guy takes second, one takes third. The next day, it just shifts, right? The guy that was taking second team reps now takes first. Everybody moves. And then the third day, everybody moves again. And then the fourth day, they're back to where they were.
Yeah.
But
so you're not getting the same amount of reps every day, but you're
reps. That's the problem. Like, right. I don't know. I guess I would try if I was
still going to be fairly concentrated though, because of the fact that they're condensing the practice. You know what I mean?
True.
So it's not like you're going to go a couple days practice, then a couple days off. It's not
going to be a
lot more
from
condensed.
when you're right. Look, everything obviously needs to be charted. Number one, right? Every single rep, and it doesn't matter who you're throwing to, whether it's somebody that's going to be on the first team as a wide receiver or somebody that is a walk-on. It doesn't matter, right? It's how do you control the offense, right? Do you know what you're getting, getting them in and out of good plays? Are you leading? All of those different things. Every throw needs to be charted. Every play needs to be charted, all of these things. And then it's going to be a numbers game. And there will be a piece of it that's like, okay, from a gut feeling standpoint as a coach, who do I want? Who's the better leader? Who are the guys, stepping up for inherently, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe subconsciously, like who do they perform better for? I think that's legitimate, right? That's not something that you can necessarily write down, but that's something that you can feel as a coaching staff, right? All of those things need to go into play. Ideally, I think you get it from 3 to 2. Like I would want to almost eliminate somebody in spring. I hate to say that.
That's what Irish English is saying. For that reason, I could see 3 go down to 2 unofficially.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
I agree with that. I think in the spring, that would be my goal. We got to get it to 2. It'd be great if we could get it to 1 and it's just like one clear-cut guy. That'd be great.
So you're saying by the end of spring or at some point in the spring, it's like, okay.
By the end of spring, I want 2. You know what I mean? And then let those 2 battle it out, and that's fine going into the fall, because then you're going to get a great 1 and a great 2. I would want to at least get it to 2 after spring. And I didn't even see your comment, Irish English. I think you nailed it. That's what I would want to do. Hopefully in a perfect world, that kind of happens. I guess in a more perfect world,
I don't think there's any way that they're going to declare 1.
I don't think so
by
either.
The end of spring. It's going to be left lingering, but then, that there is going to be another transfer portal. And I feel like, because I think it was Mitchell Evans, who maybe made the comments, like one of the things that, like, again, not talking about one guy over the other, but I think he said something to the effect of guys at some point, like teammates, like they know who the guy is.
Agreed.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that even in the room for the, like you might have a really hard-headed guy who just doesn't see, and sometimes that's good because he wants to compete and whatever else. But like, the other guys know who the guy is. And I think that, that third guy, there's more likely than not that the third guy is going to be probably a notch or 2 below where the other 2 guys are, assuming that they're, the other 2 are fairly even.
And whether they make an announcement or not, the transfer portal will be the litmus test, right? If somebody jumps in the portal, you can probably assume that they're probably the third person. You know what I mean? Like, we'll see what it looks like. I will say this. I will be shocked if all 3 guys are still on the roster in the fall. I will be shocked if that is the case. That's me talking. I don't have any inside information that is or isn't the case, right? But after spring, I just feel like they're going to know at least if it's down to 2 guys. Like it has to be somewhat obvious at that point. And we'll see. I mean, I think you give all 3 guys a legit shot, but I also agree with Mike in an earlier comment. He said something along the lines of like, they know who Angeli is. I think they know more about who Angeli is than the other 2.
Yeah, because he's played in games.
He's played in games, and he's played with the first.
He started a full game.
And,
he's played some other. Yeah, he's been the backup quarterback. They have a very, and obviously everything that they do in practice is on film. So they have a ton of film on Steve Angeli. They have a lot less on Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr.
Right. Absolutely. And so I would almost lean a little more towards getting those guys more reps early to kind of even some things out a little bit as far as from a rep standpoint and maybe seeing what these guys can do and, that kind of stuff. But it's going to be interesting how they handle it. And we're not going to see it because we're not going to be at every practice. We're not going to know how they come to this conclusion. For all we know, they know exactly who they want to be the starter going into spring. That's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know. I don't think that's the case, but that's definitely a possibility. Bottom line is they got 3 guys that I think can all run this team. I think there's certain players that maybe run it better than others, but I think all of them could be successful, running the team for Notre Dame.
I mean, like last year, remember, by the end of spring, there was no Riley Leonard. For most of spring, there was no Riley Leonard. But at the end of the spring, we obviously didn't see Riley Leonard in the blue gold game, and we didn't see him in the closed door scrimmage, where that we got to actually go and watch. So we got to see kind of that was really the biggest indication of warts and all, just like sort of those guys being on display, and we got a really pretty fair comparison of who those other guys were. Now, we expect them a year later to all have, be at least a little bit different, another year more developed and everything else. But I guess my point is, to your point about what we're actually going to get to see this spring, I really do wonder, will they give us like that same opportunity with, with that closed door scrimmage to see the live stuff so that we can see it and absorb it. And then, basically kind of come out from behind the closed doors and tell the world what we saw the way we did last year. Because obviously we had some interceptions to talk about, processing and decision-making.
Oh, yeah.
And then to a degree, it was a little bit different a week later. Like Steve Angeli played a better game in the, in the actual blue gold game. And CJ Carr maybe wasn't, quite the same guy in the blue gold game, but we definitely got to see Carr make some plays in that
Absolutely.
game.
Look, there was, in my opinion, there was a clear pecking order coming out of spring. Now, that's not the way it ended up on the depth chart. But I also understand that too. He's a true freshman. He was an early enrollee. Like, I get all that, and that's fine. And I'm sure they explained that to him. We're gonna do some word association later, so I'm gonna save some of that. But at the same time, I understood it for 24. I would not understand it for 25 if we continue to see an equal amount of maturation amongst all 3 of them, right? If they were all right here, right? If they get to here, right? In a year, which is what we're at, and they all mature the same direction, which is not going to be the case potentially, right? Then I would not understand that exact pecking order going into 25. You know what I mean? That they would have some splaining to do, like an I Love Lucy. You got some splaining to do. All right. That would not work for me. But
I'm surprised you know who I Love Lucy is.
Oh, I used to watch that all the time when I was
a kid.
Did you? Yeah.
Wow.
My parents love that stuff.
Mike says Angeli hasn't beaten him out in 2 years. Nothing says that he will now. It's been pretty obvious to me. CJ or Kenny will be leading this team.
That's a fair point to make at this point. Look, if this is my take on it, and I know we've discussed this in the past, if they had the faith in him, in Steve Angeli, that a lot of the fans do, then, Riley Leonard's not in a Notre Dame.
Yeah, he would have just been the starter last year.
Right.
They wouldn't have gone to the portal last year. There was a reason they went to the portal.
and they got an
They
injured
felt
Riley
like
Leonard.
last season they had to get to the playoffs.
Correct.
And they weren't confident enough in
Right.
Steve Angeli that he could be the guy to get them there.
Right. I mean, their actions speak louder than words, right?
Mm-hmm.
What they did tells me what I need to know about what they thought of the quarterback room last year, right? Now, has that changed this year? It's definitely possible, right? I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to find out, I think, pretty quickly the answer to that. So,
Josh, we addressed this at the beginning of last week's show. It's come up on the Champions Lounge a couple times. It's okay that you asked because obviously not everybody sees it, and that's why we let off last week's show with it. March 18th, 2 weeks from tomorrow, spring practice begins. So
I want to know who Kate is. Koval? Is that what we're talking about? Or is there a new player on the football team that we're not?
Yeah, I know, right?
That we're unaware of. Sorry. Just messing with you, John.
Go ahead and save that. We can save that for rapid fire when we talk about it. I thought she played a really good game when she got in there yesterday, though.
Agreed. No, completely.
I thought she and Liza Carlin gave them some really good minutes.
When they went to two bigs, it's a very interesting lineup, in my opinion, when they have both of them in there at the same time, what they're able to do, and some of the passing that was occurring when they were both in there, I thought was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Not to go too far off tangent here.
Ooh, Jogo and Lowe's. Riley Leonard didn't invite Angeli to Alabama last summer. Now, I think the report was like Angeli had something else going on. Or
I'm
something
sure he was.
like
why
that.
would he not?
I don't think he was a total snub. I think he invited basically anybody who could go down there.
Agreed.
From quarterbacks, wide receivers. I don't think he was a snub.
He goes, I don't know, just stirring the pot.
What? Never seen that before. Yeah. Guys just stirring the pot.
Just getting in there. There'll be plenty of pot stirring throughout this spring. I can tell you that right now. Man. There's going to be, people are going to take a minute detail that they see. And by people, I mean the media. They're going to take a minute detail that they see in the 5 period that we get, and they're going to blow it up. Whether it's a pro CJ person or a pro Kenny person or a pro,
what annoys me about that is and look, it's not everywhere across the board. There are obviously, a lot of people who've been around and, who've seen it, know football, everything else, who watch, observe, a lot of football knowledge, and everyone, it's essentially everyone's got their own opinion, but the whole, when we start parsing, this rep versus this rep and what this means, and, and the declarations that this guy is having a better spring than this guy because of a couple of non-live reps, that we, that are seen out there. And then what happens is, they're putting that stuff out there, but then
we have to
come
talk
into
about
these shows and we respond to it.
Yes. That's what I was referring to. If people didn't understand before, when I talked about what I'm excited about in the spring with the quarterback competition and what I'm not excited about, what you just explained is what I'm not excited about.
Yes.
Is having to push back or defend what other outlets are putting out there about what they see. Because I can tell you right now, we don't see squat when they give us the first 5 periods. We don't see anything. And nothing that we see in that first 5 periods will dictate who the starting quarterback is going to be.
Correct.
They literally warm them up and go through
But because that's what we're seeing, these guys start parsing all that stuff out and looking at every little thing as if, this guy is declaratively better than this guy because of a couple one-on-one reps or even, receivers versus air and, Oh, it's just that's
RVAs, baby. Yep.
Yeah. That's what gets your head spinning.
It does. That's the part that frustrates me the most. You know what? Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I can tell you who throws the prettier ball and that kind of stuff, when they're warming up. Right? We've talked about this 1,000 times. When it's the 3 quarterbacks and Gino Guidugli just throwing the ball to each other, some guys look better than others. But you know what? That means nothing when it comes to who's going to lead the team, right? I can have my favorite when I watch them throw a football, but that's a best dressed contest. That's all that is. You know what I mean? What happens when there's actual, 21 other guys on the field and you're playing the game of football? Like, what does that look like? That's what matters. That's why I'm praying, I am hoping against hope that we actually get to see the jersey scrimmage this year.
I know.
Because that is where we will see what we need to see to make any kind of declarations as media members. Other than that,
or at least solid judgments,
right.
Whether they're declarations or
fair.
Not.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Because that's like best on best, that kind of stuff. Who's processing, who's throwing, who's doing what, right? That's when you're actually going to get to know something, not routes versus air and, things of that nature. Like, you're just not going to be able to take that much from that. The only thing, I say all that to say this, unless we're seeing one of the three guys consistently running out with the third team, right? Like, every time we're there, CJ runs out with the third team. Well, the writing's probably on the wall at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other than that, like that kind of stuff, you're just not going to be able to pull that much from it.
All right. So you teased the word association.
I did.
And I thought it might be fun. Jesse and I did word association with the assistant coaches last week.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I thought, let's do a little word association with the three quarterbacks.
It's like your thing. You are a word association guy.
It's free flow.
I love it. Love it.
Chain of thought.
Love it.
Let's do it. Let's just start with Steve Angeli. What comes to mind when you think of Mr. Angeli?
Leader, poised, ideal backup. I mean, that's what I want in my backup quarterback. I want you to be poised. I want you to just be completely unfazed by the moment. And that's Steve Angeli. He is unfazed by the moment, which is why he was the backup this year. It's not because he had more talent than the other two guys. It's because they knew that if they had to put him in a big moment, a la the Orange Bowl against Penn State, that nothing was going to faze him. He was just going to go out there. He's going to do his job to the best of his ability and be Steve Angeli. Like, nothing was going to faze him. That's who Steve Angeli is. He could be a very good starting quarterback, no doubt about it, because of that, because he's unfazed, because, he's a gamer. He's all of those things. Yep. DK, he's elite, right? That's who he is. And that's why he won that job last year. Will that translate to being the starter at Notre Dame? That remains to be seen, but he is the ideal person to throw into the fire at the last second, because it's not, the facial expression will not change. Like, that's who you get. And I think that's an admirable quality. That's a quality I want in a quarterback.
Yeah, the things that come to mind for me: capable, confident, prepared. Like, I think confident. Like, he is ultra confident. And I think that helps him. And again, like, he puts in the work. He's prepared. He's more than capable of doing the job. We've seen him do the job, whether it's the Sun Bowl or, as you said, the Orange Bowl coming in relief. My word cloud, you said it. Ideal backup. Like, that would be that. Like, that's where our intersection is. I do think that Steve Angeli Steve Angeli, obviously the floor is maybe a little bit higher, with him than the other guys, but the ceiling is much lower as well. That's
fair. That's a fair analysis of the talent level, right? Again, you can win a lot of games with Steve Angeli.
Yeah.
You can win a lot of games with Steve Angeli. There's no doubt about it. But if he was a championship level quarterback, he would have been the starter in 24. That's kind of I don't know how to say it, but like, that's what I want to land on. That's where I'm planting my flag. You know what I mean? Like, if he was a championship level quarterback, he would have been the starter in 24. Like, that's how I feel. And so
I agree.
Have things changed in a year? That's the question mark.
I think that Steve Angeli would have given you much more consistency than what they got out of Drew Pine a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like, again, they're like, when you're talking about ceilings and floors, there would have been a much higher level of consistency and ability to run the offense. But I think, like the last time we talked about Steve Angeli, you kind of made the joke about, the tight end would have a heck of a season, Steve Angeli, it's like, oh, so you're comparing him to Drew Pine. I mean, I think that, and by the way, like when you look at what that season turned into and where Drew Pine's career has gone since then, like, don't you have to give them quite a bit of credit for being able to do what they did?
Every ounce of, whatever of quarterback play out of him. Yeah,
man.
Because his career has not gone the direction that I'm sure he envisioned when he was leaving Notre Dame.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right. How about Kenny Minchey then?
Wild card. Like that's the best thing I can come up with. He's the wild card, right? He's got the arm talent. He's got the athletic ability. He's the wild card, right? He kind of embodies maybe the best of both worlds potentially, but I still think we don't know enough about him, and that's what makes him the wild card, right? Like, I think he can make throws, and then there'll be other times where I don't know where the ball is going, but it looks pretty getting there. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of Kenny Minchey, right? He can make some plays with his legs. We know that. He kind of has those Patrick Mahomes, like, off-platform throws and some things of that nature that might make him not as consistent as a Steve Angeli, for example, but also might make him a little bit more dynamic than a Steve Angeli, right? So he's the biggest wild card in this entire conversation for me. Is I just don't know what he's going to bring to the table, and will he bring it on a consistent level? He's got a ton of talent rolling around in that body of his. It's just, how's it going to come out? Like that, it's just a wild card. It's a big question mark.
And this is like mine, like you said, big question mark. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of Steve Angeli, like as part of this mix, being in this mix, it's the great unknown because we haven't seen that much of him. And Stymie came in with unknown. So we're kind of along the same lines, in the thinking there. DK says forgotten. And I think that sometimes he is a little bit forgotten because most people do talk about he's kind of the middle child. Most people talk about either, the eldest Steve Angeli or the youngest CJ Carr is kind of
I think how it
turns out. I think he is forgotten, but again, we know that he has, great athletic skill, great athletic talent. And like you said, the ability to kind of make some throws and make some plays off platform. We know he can run with the ball, but just how consistent he can be as a passing quarterback. I think that there is a bundle of talent there, but it is still just extremely raw because of, just kind of where the pecking order has come in. He was obviously number 3 at best all of last season, so like what those reps look like, he's just sort of been stuck in the middle there throughout his first couple of years of his career.
I'm actually curious how the breakdown of reps actually went with the 4 quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Did they like what did CJ get? What did Kenny get? Because really, when you're in practice, I mean, you're practicing with the 1s and the 2s primarily, and then you kind of throw a handful of reps to the 3s. And usually the 4th quarterback is the scout team quarterback, but I don't believe that was the case last year. So
he did sometimes. I know he and like when Carr was kind of went through that stretch in October and early November when the elbow was, injured or whatever. Minchey was doing some scout team stuff, and Buckner was doing scout team stuff as well. So like he was at least part of that mix from time to time. But
I think Rizak was a scout team guy at times. And I think
later in the season, I think he was. Yeah,
I think it just probably depended on the skill set, of the opposing quarterback.
Yeah, like who you were trying to mimic. Yeah,
right. I think that was part of it. So I'm curious as to how that went. Like, what kind of experiences in practice did Kenny and CJ get? Like, I don't know the answer to that because we weren't there, obviously. You know what I mean? Because, again, you primarily focus on the 1s and the 2s, right? The 3s are kind of throw-ins at that point, and what does that look like? And most teams don't have enough guys who are scholarship-level players to have a full 3rd team with rotation guys. You know what I mean? Because you got 1st team with rotation, you got 2nd team with rotation, and then you're kind of filling in the gaps for the 3rd team. We see that all the time, in preseason, and spring is even worse, obviously, because you just don't have everybody there yet, So 3rd team can be a real, grab bag, I guess.
Yes. Especially once you get into the regular season, though, because like spring, there are going to be a lot of different guys, and we've talked about this before. There are going to be a lot of different guys who are going to get more reps in the spring simply because it's spring, and you want to give some of these younger guys looks, and you're able to give them some looks because all of the freshmen aren't here yet, and you obviously have all the guys who just graduated, so the roster is smaller right now, so everybody gets more reps. You're not preparing for a game, so you just you get to do a lot of different things, and again, to an extent, that makes it a little bit nicer because of the fact that you have 3 guys vying for this job, but at the same time, you do want it to be closer to like a 50-50 rather than 33% of the reps, I think.
Right. Yep. I agree.
Okay. So how about CJ Carr? What's your word association for CJ?
This was actually a tough one because like the words that I was coming up with, I think are overplaying my hand a little bit. Well, I shouldn't even say that. Like, I think it's putting the expectations way too high, like prodigy or generational talent.
Dude, literally prodigy is the first thing that
was it really?
Yes.
See,
so you don't have to feel bad. You don't have to feel bad.
Like I want to tamp down the expectations as much as possible. But what I've seen from him in a competitive situation is unlike anything that I've seen at Notre Dame at the quarterback position since I've been covering the team. And that's 20 years. So that's where I'm at. Now, maybe he's hit his peak. Maybe it's all downhill from here. Like, I don't know. But I tell you, man, what I see from him, every time I see him throw the football or be in a competitive situation, it's impressive. It's prodigy-like. It's generational-like. It is.
Yeah, there's just something different there in comparison to when you put both the skill level and the, just the anticipation, the poise, his ability, to read and go through progressions, like prodigy, pedigree are the first 2 things.
There you go, pedigree
that I thought of because I kind of put him, not kind of. I think I did. I'm saying it like I'm second guessing myself, but I put him in that same category as like Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, probably even Arch Manning, I guess. Someone even a little bit more recent because they all came from, like the football playing families, right? Like at a high level, not just, oh, your dad played at a D3 or whatever. It's like, Peyton Manning obviously played for Archie Manning, he's the son of Archie Manning who played in the NFL for a long time, grew up being a quarterback. And just Peyton Manning's ability, one, he had work ethic. CJ Carr does as well, but like his ability coming in the door in the NFL out of Tennessee, he just had all those intangibles to go along with the talent that came with it. Same with Andrew Luck, again, whose dad played in the NFL. And obviously Arch Manning, his dad didn't play in the NFL, but he comes from.
He probably would have, though, if he didn't have some of the issues that he had. I mean, he was playing D1 as a wide receiver. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's not from he does not come from an unathletic family. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it still tracks. Everything you're saying still tracks. And that's who this kid is. Like, he's beyond his years from a mental standpoint. If you ask the kid to go up to the board and, draw up play, like if this was quarterback camp or whatever that what's his name used to do all the time. Why is his name escaping me? He was the head coach of the Buccaneers and then the Raiders. Gruden, thank you. When he would do his quarterback camp and he have guys get up on the board and write things out, and like he could do that very easily. And he has already physically matured in the 1 year that we have seen him. When he got here to school to where he is now, you see him on like the documentary and things like that. Like he has matured in a physical standpoint too. So once the mental and the physical like meet at the same level, I just feel like the sky's the limit.
I agree. And, and again, I think that's why everybody is so high on him. Just the little glimpse of what we got to see last year and just, the things that we hear. I think that is exactly why. Mike says Angeli should equal Reese in 2012. relief man.
Look, if Angeli is willing to take that role, and that's the key, right? He's a super competitive guy, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. If he's willing to put himself in that role and be that guy, I'm sure Marcus Freeman would love to have him in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know that in his mind he would be willing to debase himself to be the backup again.
Right.
I just don't think that's not
younger
who he
guy.
is.
He's put in the time,
right?
All those different things. I mean, that's kind of how I feel as well. But again, go back to the confidence that Steve Angeli has. I mean, I think it's
again, I would never want to take that away from him.
Yeah,
like I
it's a big
want
part of why
guys.
He's still here. This far down the line after they brought in transfer portal quarterbacks the last couple of years.
And look, I don't know where he's at on his academic journey, anything like that. Like if he's close to getting his degree, whatever. I don't know. I just don't know with the way things are these days, where he's at with all that. I would, if he doesn't win the job, if that's the case, if he doesn't win the job and the writing is on the wall, right, I would encourage him to go someplace else, because he can be successful as the starting quarterback in a lot of places. In my opinion, just not here. He could be successful here.
I agree.
He's not a championship level quarterback here.
Do you agree with what DK says? Will Angeli start for a Power 4 team this year?
I think so. I think that's definitely a possibility. What level of P4 is the next conversation, right? Like, I don't think he's transferring to Georgia and we'll start there.
No,
you know
what
I mean? But could he transfer to IU and start? Yep. Could he transfer to Rutgers and start? Yep. Could he transfer to Northwestern? Yep. Like all of 100%. And I think it's probably 2/3 of the Power 4 he could go and start for. And I would feel very comfortable with him as my starting quarterback, right? That's where I'm at. And I think that's accurate. But we'll see. Again, that's only if they literally sit him down and be like, look, it's not going to happen here. Let's find you a great landing spot.
Yeah, I just want to say this because I have no idea who Zelensky has outlived his usefulness is. That's his title in the chat. And we don't talk politics in this show. So you can either stop the politics or
get the pancakes, baby.
You'll watch from the outside looking in.
Get the syrup ready.
That's right. We're not stirring the pot on a bunch of political crap in this show.
Nope. So either side. It's not how we roll.
Right.
If you want to talk politics, let's talk quarterback battle, because that's what we're talking about today. All right.
That's right. Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Might as well. Let's go.
Let's just do it.
I know this is going to be this is going to be fun because we got all kinds of stuff kind of coming our way here. So
we do. Fill in the blank. The position group you have the most concern with going into spring practice is blank.
I had to think about this one for a minute, and I think I'm going to go defensive line. And not for lack of talent, because I think there's a lot of talent there. We got a lot of guys coming off injury, and then you got a lot of young talent, right? And if those things can merge and intersect in a good way, and they don't deal with major injuries and things like that moving forward, I think the defensive line can be very, very good. But they don't have a Riley Mills or, a Howard Cross coming back that you just know are going to be the centerpieces of that defensive line. You've got some question marks in there. Now, those question marks are only there because of just lack of production up to this point, not lack of talent. And so, like I said, if it all comes together, I think they're going to be great. But that's my biggest question mark right now.
Thank you very much, Zelensky. Appreciated for the response. That's fine. You can keep your handle. Just,
it's all good.
Political talk. That's right. It's political talk. So I agree with you. I agree with John. Defensive line is it. And I even like when I thought of this question, like, I don't even know how much of a concern it is just because of the fact that it is the spring. But it is definitely the unit that's got the most questions, at least in this moment right now, for some of the reasons that you outline. Like you're not going to have, those two interior starting guys from last year, plus you're not going to have two Vipers who you hope to have back by some point, in hopefully in fall training camp and definitely by the season, you hope to have those guys back. But there are just a lot of and you're bringing in a couple of transfers who at least have some experience. But, again, it's like that's the unit that at the very least has the most question marks, and they can start to figure some of that stuff out. I guess, the offensive line has some question marks as well, but because of the talent, that we have seen, with that unit, I think the general feeling is, well, that's going to figure itself out at that point. That's not going to be that much of an issue, but there are a lot of things to sort out with the defensive line. So that's mine. Go ahead.
I was going to say my runner up, honestly, was wide receiver. And again, kind of a similar argument. Like, I think there's talent there, but are they going to be a group that stands out next year? Like we talk, stat projections and all of these different things, and we've been high on the friggin' wide receivers for years, it feels like, and they never live up to their name. Is it always their fault? No, but it's been an issue. So, is Malachi Fields going to be able to come in and be that alpha? Right? Is Jaden Greathouse going to take that next step and be, an alpha? Right? Is Notre Dame going to have alphas at wide receiver? That remains to be seen right now. They got some good guys, but are there going to be alphas there? Is it going to be a position that can take over a game if necessary? Right? I feel like the last, X amount of national champions have had some alpha wide receivers that go ahead, double cover me. It doesn't matter. Get me the football. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame hasn't had that in a while. So that would be my number 2.
And I'll be curious to see kind of what that room looks like with just these different guys throwing them the ball. As well.
That's a great point.
I think we can see. We might all of a sudden be going, wow, how about this wide receiver room? Look what this group looks like, just because it's different, just different kind of guy throwing the football, different arms throwing them the football as well.
And look, and guys throw the ball differently. Like one guy could throw a really catchable football and makes the wide receiver quick. Remember when we talked about guys are subconsciously just playing better for certain quarterbacks? Some of that has to do with catchable football. Is it put in a spot where they can get it, or is it, just the way that it's thrown, or, just all of those things, it's all part of it. It's all.
Well, and again, CJ Carr just has a different kind of anticipation, different kind of touch than either of the other two guys that are going to be in the room as well.
Right. Absolutely. Listen, here's a point that I want to make. So if you've got a guy, and I'm just using him as an example because of what you said, right? If you've got a guy like CJ Carr who is going through progressions and doing all of these things and fitting the ball into tight windows and whatever, right? Every single pass catcher on the field could potentially get the football on any play, right? And so when he's the quarterback, you might see those guys run a little harder or, run their routes a little more crisp, because there's a chance they're going to get the football. In the past, certain guys on certain plays knew they weren't getting the football, and they
just give up right away. And yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so that's kind of what I'm referring to when I say some guys are just going to play better for certain quarterbacks without even really, like, they may like one guy outside the locker room better than the other guy, but they're going to run the routes a little bit differently because they know the ball might come to them. And if the ball does come to them and they don't make a play on it, well, that's going to hurt them. You know what I mean? So I think all of those factors come into play, and I'm very interested to see how the wide receivers play with the various quarterbacks for sure.
John added special teams, and I don't think I'm worried about special teams in the spring, because really it's kind of like, it's almost like the starting point where you're just starting to identify maybe guys who can contribute, other than your typical specialists, your punters, your kickers, your long snappers,
and punters,
those kind of things. Like you're identifying guys who could potentially be special teams contributors. So I'm not nearly as worried about special teams in the spring as like fall camp, for example.
Right, because we know who the punter is going to be, right? We know who the kicker is going to be. It's going to be the kid who came in, as a transfer, right? So like, there's a lot of things that we are Noah Burnett, okay, from North Carolina. So like, those spots are solidified at this point, right? So that part I'm not as worried about because we kind of know what you're going to get. Now, I will be the first one to admit as soon as they line up and field goal, whatever, while we're there watching, I'm going to be paying pretty close attention to what this kid can do, right? But at the same time, it's real low on my concern list as far as special teams is concerned. Because look, Marty Biaggi is a good special teams coach. I was actually talking to my son about this last night. His mind for special teams is outstanding. It's outstanding. Mm-hmm. I think his actual coaching of kickers and punters specifically leaves a little something to be desired. But I think his mind is really, really good when it comes to specialty fakes and, different things of that nature. I think that's really, really good. So I'm just not that worried about special teams for that reason.
I agree. I totally agree. All right, I'm gonna turn a corner on this one. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Sean Astin, who played Daniel Rudiger, of course, in the movie Rudy, had a stunt double for the football scenes in the movie.
How did this come up out of curiosity? I've got my answer.
So it was on social media.
Okay.
Late last week or over the weekend. Clifton is apparently an athletic custom clothing company.
Okay.
And they posted, I guess it was actually on Facebook. They posted a photo of Sean Astin with his stunt double on set. They're like, it's like they're both in the like they're wearing the identical thing. And let me see if I know I've had troubles doing this.
I know, but if you can put this up, this would be great. While you're looking for it, I will give my answer. How about that?
Okay.
So I remember, okay, look, Rudy's one of my favorite movies, whatever, Homer, I don't care. It came out in 1993. I was 12 years old. Like, that was the point where I was getting into Notre Dame football, and I remember going to see that movie in the movie theaters. Like, I'll never forget sitting in the theater and hearing those drums when it just first starts. Dun, 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 like, and I was sold. Like, I was in. It was over, right? So it's one of my favorite movies. And so I tried to find out as much about that movie as I possibly could throughout my lifetime. I knew that he had a stunt double, number one. But he did some of it himself. But he also, like, if you watch that movie, there is nothing really left to the imagination when he is getting his arse handed to him on a daily basis in practice. Like that,
right?
That sequence where they're showing.
I just texted it to you, by the way. I couldn't figure out how to share it because it's in my photos. So I don't know if you know how to.
I think I can. Let's see if we can do this. That's interesting. I am not in any way surprised because
I realize it happens on a movie. I realize it happens on a movie set, but it's like, it's almost like finding out Buddy the Elf didn't actually live, in the North Pole. It's like,
it's fair.
I was somewhat taken aback when I saw this. It's essentially a carbon copy of Sean Astin standing next to him. They're both wearing the 45 practice jersey and the white practice pants that are all muddied up, and they've got them looking as close to each other as possible. The guy's maybe an inch or so shorter than Sean Astin. So, I mean, it's like, that he's not just going to go out there and just, get it. The actor is not going to go out there and get it handed to him. But it's like, Rudy is about like the scrappy little guy who was, supposed to be doing all this stuff. And so it was a little bit shocking. It's like a little bit shocking to see Sean Astin with the stunt double. There you go.
All right, so I'm gonna try to zoom in here a little bit.
You put it up there. There it is. Like, look at that.
There we go.
Look at that.
There. How about that?
So like when Sean Astin, when the pulling guard came around and just plowed over Sean Astin, that was this dude
That's this guy right here.
Wrecked in practice. That's right. He actually got to get wrecked.
Listen, I would love to like talk to these two about what that felt like. To be honest with you, because like I said, in the movie, I mean, they are just getting smoked.
Yeah,
I mean, just absolutely
team guys. They're supposed to
hammered. Right? Like, oh my gosh! Like I've seen a lot of practices. You know what I mean? Like Notre Dame practice. I've never seen anybody get smoked like that, like over and over. I realized it was a different time and like all of that. If I was Sean Astin, I'd be like, look, you better find somebody else. Like, I'll take some of these hits, but I can't do this over and over and over again. There's no way. There's no way. But
DK said, so Rudy didn't actually play in the game. Did Vince Vaughn have a stunt? I mean, Vince Vaughn's character only got hit like once, I think, right? But I'm sure he did.
He got hit by Sean Astin. So, like, I think he's probably okay.
That's right.
Even though he thought it was the Super Bowl. Last practice of the season.
That's right. This guy thinks it's a Super Bowl.
He used some different words that we won't use.
That we can't use on this show, unfortunately. I thought it was pretty cool, though. So
yes, that's a really cool picture. It is now saved in my Google Photos forever. So that's how I was able to bring that up.
Yeah, fill in the blank. Wally Szczerbiak had a foot-in-mouth moment on CBS this weekend. The college basketball analyst was working in studio talking about highlights from Penn State's win against Maryland. And, of course, we're talking basketball. And while talking about Penn State's success, Szczerbiak said, Mr. Shrewsbury's coaching up his boys. This blunder, Vince, is blank.
Look, I'm hard on people. I'm going to say it's inexcusable because Shrewsbury's been gone for 2 years now.
Yes.
And I get that he was at Penn State, but he was only at Penn State for a couple of years. So how is that ingrained in your mind that that's who the head coach is when he's been gone for 2 years and he wasn't even there that long to begin with? Right. So that's inexcusable. Like, you've got to know what you're talking about if you're going to be an analyst. Like, you've got to at least get the coach's name right. And again, he's been gone for 2 years, man. Like,
and that's the thing. It's like everybody has a slip up, you know, like you forget a name or something like that, maybe every now and then. But this is literally 2 years ago. And to think that Micah Shrewsbury is still at Penn State, this is bad for a guy on network TV who we're supposed to, you know, consider an expert in all things college basketball. It's pretty bad.
That's tough. Like that's a tough one for me to swallow, especially since like Micah Shrewsbury has gotten some press for the way he acted at the press conference.
Yeah, like the viral moment a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
like you would have thought that would get in your brain.
That's tough, man. Like, that's really tough for me. And what? Yeah, I don't know. Was it a Big Ten network or what channel is
it? CBS. It was CBS. Okay. Like they were like the screenshot that I saw. The game Penn State Maryland was on Big Ten Network, but I think they were like at halftime of UConn's game against whoever UConn was playing on CBS, and you know, like going through, you know, different, you know, game highlights and stuff like that. And he just, you know, Mr. Shrewsbury's got him going up there, you know, Penn State, whatever.
That's
not good.
That's tough,
not good,
man.
Wally.
Like, that's tough.
Lock it down.
I didn't realize
March Madness is coming.
Analyst.
Yeah,
I didn't realize he was an analyst, but shouldn't have to worry about
for a while. Yeah,
shouldn't have to worry about Coach Shrewsbury's name coming in March. So you probably just retire that one for the year.
True story. Notre Dame women's basketball, though, won a share of the ACC regular season championship, got the number 2 seed in this week's ACC tournament with their win over rival Louisville yesterday. How should they feel about it, Vince?
They should feel not unbeatable. They should not feel like, you know, the 19-game win streak, you start to feel pretty good about yourself. You feel like you can really do no wrong. Well, yeah, that 2-game skid, I think, opened up some eyes, you know what I mean? And realized, okay, we need to focus on some defense. We need to focus on moving the ball around a little bit more. It was very telling, the little package that they did prior to the game about how, you know, they missed some open people in some areas in the Florida State game when they could have had some easy buckets and just won that game, some things of that nature, stuff we already knew, but that's not Notre Dame. And they got away from who they are. So I think they should feel fine about it. Like, there's not a whole lot of difference between a 1 and a 2 seed, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, there's some matchups since there's some different things, but you're going to be on opposite sides of the bracket and you're going to eventually whittle your way down to the championship.
Yeah.
And you're going to play the number 2 seed potentially, right? Or the number 1 seed, whatever. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Again, if it was the difference between a double bye and a single bye, like that kind of a thing, that would not be great. If they don't match up well against whoever their first round, second round, whatever, then okay. They're in a great spot to win the ACC championship. That's the way I feel. And being a 1 or a 2 doesn't matter. They should feel fine about it.
No, I agree, and I kind of like the draw, but
okay,
the way it turned out, where they are as the 2 seed. I mean, theoretically, everyone would like the 1 seed, and I do find it interesting that they're like NC State people complaining, well, how come they're co-champs? When we beat them and all this kind of stuff. Well, they had the same record. That means you got beat by 2 other teams as well. That's why conferences do this. You share the title, because of the fact that there are other teams involved. Yeah, you won a head-to-head, but you also lost to somebody else. So
right.
Florida State's on the other side of the bracket because they're the 4 seed, and that's obviously who beat Notre Dame last week. I'm not saying that that's like a team that that they should fear by any means. It was a different, it was definitely a more methodical approach that they had to that game. But that's something that, coming out of that Florida State game, that like Niele Livy and her staff felt like they needed to get back to, just sharing the basketball more. And I do find it pretty interesting and pretty telling that not only did Hannah Hidalgo lead Notre Dame with 20 points yesterday, she also led Notre Dame with 6 assists in the game. And like, I know she talked after the game about, hey, I can't win a national championship by myself. It takes all of us, as a team, that kind of thing. And they obviously came back to the fact that when they are their best, it's not just bring it up court, chuck up a shot and see what happens. It's move the basketball around. They had 14 assists yesterday, which is not a huge number, but I also was actually, I was doing a double take looking at the score sheet. They only had 24 made field goals. Now they did make 18 free throws as well, but 24 made field goals, with 14 assists is a pretty good ratio there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Let me look at the ratio. 58%. That is actually above their season total. And they had been the last couple games in the losses, the assist total percentage-wise, assists compared to made field goals was like down around, 30% or something like that. So a lot better. And I like, we were talking earlier about how they looked defensively. I liked the looks that they gave Louisville with Kate Koval and Liza Carlin coming off the bench, because Louisville started off like it was pretty obvious, as we said going in, that Louisville was going to basically just rip off what NC State and Florida State did and start driving to the basket. And they came out, they tried to do some of that. Carlin, they did a little bit more of that in the first quarter. Carlin comes in, she draws a charge, and I thought that was a fairly pivotal early moment. And then Koval comes in, she blocks a shot early, and it's like, okay, we can't just drive at will. And they really, they didn't do nearly as much of that the rest of the game after that. So, hey, help side defense. There's a reason. There's a reason it's there, right?
Yeah, they didn't do a whole lot of that against Florida State, unfortunately. And so I'm glad they kind of got back to basics, in this game and against Louisville, because they needed it, right? They just needed to be reintroduced to the basics. They're a really good and talented and deep team. All of those things, those are all true. It's just they kind of got away from who they were. And I guess better now than in the ACC tournament and better now than in the NCAA tournament, obviously, So Hopefully they just right the ship, and now they can just go on a little bit of a streak and, win the games that they've got left and get to the Final Four and hopefully do some damage there.
Yeah, it would be awesome if we see a Notre Dame NC State matchup in the championship game.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that because, you can take care of some unfinished business. You can prove, who you are and who you are as a team, all those things. I would love that. Absolutely.
Mark asked if I got one of the green flashing cowboy hats. I did not. I did not get one. I didn't even I guess I saw them, but it didn't really dawn on me that the students were wearing them over there. And then I saw after the game, like Leah Tu King was wearing one on the floor. And I think, didn't Hannah wear one to the press conference or something like that?
Did she really?
Did you see any of that?
Well, I can tell you, I've got one upstairs. So there's one in my house.
Did your daughter bring one home?
She did, and apparently they were supposed to be for the students only, but they had a few extras, and they happened to be walking past the table, and so they got one of their own as well. So
sweet,
they're actually pretty cool. They're to be given away for free. They're actually really cool.
So I think this is what John was talking about earlier. Said Kate needs to play more. Again, she and Liza gave them both good defense, and they combined for 15 points. Between the two of them. And honestly, that's really if you can get that kind of point production combined out of Carlin and Koval, game in and game out, you just get around 15 points. I think that's really good production because of what they gave them defensively was a huge boost, like we talked about as well.
Absolutely. Yes, no question about it.
And unfortunately, Westfeld got into some foul trouble early again. So
that's been an issue for her in the last couple games. Yeah, that's because they need her on the floor. She's a leader on this team, and she can't be sitting on the bench in the fourth quarter like that.
Yep.
Got to watch that foul trouble, man. That's a bugaboo right now.
Yep. So after South Carolina and Texas tied for the SEC women's basketball regular season title, because they split their head-to-head regular games. They each had one loss in conference play. They were against each other. They decided the seeding for the SEC tournament with a coin toss. Do you buy or sell the coin toss to decide the tie, Vince?
I mean, I'm good with it. I think, look, what I don't like, to be perfectly honest with you, is when they get to the 7th or 8th tiebreaker, and they're talking about who led in rebounds on Christmas Day.
This versus this, yeah.
It gets way too in the mud. Look, you had the same schedule, you had the same record, you split the series. Let's flip the coin. I'm actually fine with that. And again, the difference between 1 and 2 isn't that much. You're on opposite sides of the bracket. You got to get there. I think it's fine. I'm okay with a coin toss. I really am.
I am too. I saw some people losing their minds, but what I didn't see was how do you, what's your alternative to this? You've got to have something, and apparently, because head to head is the first thing, and I saw it was something record versus other top teams in the conference or something like that, and there was no difference there. So it's like you said, are you going to go down to the 8th tiebreaker and do that? Just flip the coin and get it over with. It was good enough for Friday Night Lights when they had a 3-way
tie.
I
was just going to say that.
It's good enough for Friday Night Lights out in the truck stop. It should be good enough for Greg Sankey. Yep. They even made a specially made coin that had South Carolina's logo on one side and Texas Longhorn on the other side. They printed that out pretty quick.
You want to talk about a waste of money? That would be it right there. Just somebody grab a 1978, quarter out of their pocket. Let's flip this thing and call it a day. But I guess that's actually pretty cool. But yeah.
See, I don't know if you can never tell if DK is being, sarcastic or what. He says head to head should decide. Again, the reason they had to flip the coin was because they played each other twice and they each beat each other. So they each had one conference loss. They were to each other. South Carolina beat Texas in one. Texas beat South Carolina in the other. So,
he go back to your sarcastic because he just. Oh yeah. Oh DK, what are we gonna do with you, buddy?
I know. Fill in the blank. It's blank that after the New York Giants did the first ever off-season edition of HBO's Hard Knocks last summer, Bill Belichick's North Carolina Tar Heels are going to do the second edition of the show this summer.
Just think, Bill you need to go back to being the Bill that you were before, because I feel like you're asking for this peek behind the curtain, and it may not be what you want it to be when it's all said and done. I am not convinced this is a great move by North Carolina, and they are dumping a lot of money into this little experiment, and I'm not convinced. And you're going to bring TV cameras in on it. I just don't know that that's a great idea.
I find it very, very amusing that Bill Belichick went 20 plus years and did everything. Like the New England Patriots never did Hard Knocks.
Never.
Like the action, it's an NFL show, and the New England Patriots never did Hard Knocks because obviously Bill Belichick never let him in. Now he hasn't even coached it down in college. He goes to college after, coming out of working in TV basically for a year. And so what's he doing? He's selling his soul to the TV to get the publicity. I've also heard, though, everyone likes to, have a good time with the young girlfriend and all this stuff. Because, apparently, she's a big part of, this whole new image that we're seeing with Belichick. Apparently, she's running the social media accounts, and there's a lot of that going on. I would have to imagine that at some point, the girlfriend is going to show up on TV in this series as well.
100%.
So I think that has a lot to do with it. She has a lot to do with this new image that we get to see of Bill Belichick now. But I mean, I think it's a little bit weird just from the Hard Knocks perspective, because again, this is supposed to be an NFL thing, but after the New York Giants and the Saquon Barkley blunder last summer, no other NFL team wants to do it now. So they're going to Bill Belichick at North Carolina in college to do this show.
Yeah, I still don't think he knows what he got himself into. Whether we're talking about UNC or the girlfriend, either one, I don't think he realizes what he got himself into. So
right. So the question, no ACC regular season title, ? Incorrect. NC State and Notre Dame share the regular season ACC championship. But because, for the tournament purposes, someone has to be the 1 seed, someone has to be the 2 seed. And because NC State does have the head-to-head over Notre Dame, NC State is the 1 seed, Notre Dame is the 2 seed. But Notre Dame and NC State co-champs of the ACC.
So when they hang the banner, it's not going to say NC State 2 on it.
Right.
It'll still say, Notre Dame won the championship, and hopefully they can hang a tournament championship one right next to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, second time in 3 years, they're regular season ACC champs. You're exactly right. They don't have to say co-champs on the banner. They can just say
whatever they want.
Regular season champs. Fill in the blank. It's blank that thanks to Pat McAfee, kickers and punters were able to kick and punt at the NFL Combine for the first time ever last week, rather than just show up and get measured.
It's about time. That's what it is. I honestly had no idea that kickers and punters did not.
I didn't either.
And snappers for that matter.
I hadn't really thought about it, and then they started talking about it last week.
No idea. And I find it even more comical, by the way, that they would get measured, because who gives a crap? Because as I have said on numerous occasions, I have been coaching multiple sports for many years, and most sports, when a kid gets off the bus, you can tell whether that kid is going to be a player or not. When a kicker or a punter gets off the bus, you got nothing. You cannot tell. The most athletic kid there could be the worst one. I'm telling you, the most unathletic
look
kid
at Sebastian Janikowski. That guy would not scream this is going to be an NFL kicker for
100%
or whatever.
The one kid was it the one kid who was super tiny, who's kicking for the Saints. All right, he was 5'8".
Blake Groupie.
Blake Groupie. Thank you. He was kicking for the Saints. Nobody would have ever expected. That's not an NFL football player. You know what I mean? He's 5'8". He's 150 pounds. What? But he's got a boom for a leg. You just who cares how they measure? That means nothing. That's all I care. All I care about is if you can put it between the two pipes, or you can punt it where I need you to punt it. That's it. I don't care. So I think that's silly, but it's about time. Like I'm shocked that they didn't have them work out at the combine. I realize punters and kickers aren't usually drafted and things like that, but
you
why
would
not
still think that
have
you would
that?
like everyone's going to the same place anyway. Like, why wouldn't you bring them in? You know,
Exactly.
Like, it's crazy that they never have. You know, just to
give them an
just
hour
to watch a guy kick a few. You
yes,
know, whether it's
absolutely
punting, field goals, whatever it happens to be.
Everybody's already there. Like I realize they put a lot of stock in like Coles and Sailors and all these other, kicking companies who rank and do all these things. But like, I want to see it with my own eyes. And I'm already in Indianapolis. Bring the mountain to me. I'm Muhammad. Bring me the mountain. You know what I mean? Like I want to see these kids in person. How did it take this long? And why did Pat McAfee have to be the guy to do it? Like, that's crazy to me. I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
But like, why? You know what I mean? I don't.
Yeah, it's just crazy that it took a punter with celebrity status to make something like this happen.
100%. Just wild. And he was down there giving them some tips and stuff like that, and that's awesome.
He lives in Indy. He bases his show out of Indy, so I'm sure he had a lot of, he obviously had a lot of influence making this happen. So it's pretty cool that he did.
Wild. Yeah, touche to him. Like I think that's fantastic and good for those guys that got invited and all of that stuff. But just wild to me. Wild.
So Jimmy Johnson finally announced today on the Colin Cowherd show that he's going to retire from Fox Sports after 31 years from doing the Fox NFL pregame show.
That's great. Has it been 31 years?
31 years.
Wow.
Because there was like he left the Cowboys. He did it for a few years, and then he went to the Dolphins for a few years, and then came back. So 31 years total.
Wow.
Of course, 2-time Super Bowl champion, national champion at Miami. I just found it really interesting, Vince, because we talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
Fox aired that AI laden, career retrospective, like during the Super Bowl pregame show. And then they came to him and they were like, "So, you have any announcement, Jimmy?" And he's like, "One day at a time, Kurt, one day at a time." And it's like, I don't know. What do you think about the timing of this whole thing? Why didn't he just announce it during the pregame show?
It's funny because I wonder like what the behind the scenes stuff is. Like, hey, we're going to give him this kind of send off. And like,
did they strong arm him? And
we kind of want you to say this is it. And he didn't. Yeah. And so now like, hey, Jimmy, that was your chance. But so we're going to, before next year, you kind of got to say something at this point. So yeah, the timing is very strange. So I'm curious as if something happened behind the scenes. But I mean, 31 years, I'm shocked that it's been that long, to be perfectly honest with you. Because I remember him as the coach in the 90s. And I realize now the 90s are getting further and further away from us now as every day that ticks by. But it's wild to me. Good for him. But yeah, I would think he would want to go out with a little bit more fanfare. And he kind of got the fanfare at the Super Bowl, and he just didn't really kind of seize the moment. I guess
they gave it to him, but he didn't. Maybe he just thought he would get too emotional if he did it at that point.
He's a crier. Jimmy's a crier. We've seen it.
He's gotten choked up a little bit from time to time.
He was getting a little choked up after that AI thing too.
It just feels like of all. So like you do it on the Colin Cowherd.
That's
show.
Weird.
Like just very, very odd. Very odd.
It is very odd. I didn't realize that was the platform for retiring. Whatever.
Vince, you took my recommendation. You watched No Way Out this weekend. Your thoughts?
It was really good. Now, you were not wrong. It was a little racy at the beginning.
Right. But after that, there's really not even that much violence or anything.
No,
it's just
there's not
a lot of intrigue and
suspense. And the twist, I'm not gonna say anything else, but the twist blew my mind. It's the best way I can say it. Blew my mind. I
wish that I could like wipe it from my memory and go back and watch it again for the first time. Because I told you, like you texted me that you had watched it and you were like, again, it's like the movie's basically 45 years old at this point.
1987
by now. Like, but I mean, the first time I watched it and when the twist was revealed, I was so confused. Like
Yes.
And then you said you had to rewind it and watch it a couple times.
I rewound the whole scene because it's just the final scene of the movie is when the twist comes out. I rewound it to the beginning of that scene. I'm like, wait a minute. Did I just hear what I think I just heard?
Right.
And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was wild. It was a really good movie because there was a lot of twists that you didn't see coming. And I pride myself on kind of knowing what the outcome of a lot of movies are. Like you kind of see it coming, that kind of a thing. This one took me by absolute and complete surprise. Absolute.
I think it's one of the best twists, one of the best plot twists ever in a movie.
It for me, I haven't seen all the movies, obviously. That's right up there. No doubt about it. I did not see it coming.
Yeah, The Usual Suspects. That's another one. Have you seen The Usual Suspects before?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's one. I think No Way Out's a better movie, but like the plot twist, that's a good plot twist as well at the end. Like when you find out who the guy is.
I was absolutely blown away. For those who want to watch it, I found it on Tubi, Tubi.
Yeah, I searched after you texted me that you watched it. I'm like, I'm gonna watch it again now. And I searched like all the streamers, and we've got Netflix, we've got Amazon.
It's not on any of those.
We've got all this. It's not on any of them.
Yeah, Tubi. You download Tubi app, and it was free. Now there was some ad breaks in there for like a minute or two, which is fine because it gives me an excuse to go to the bathroom or whatever. But it's free on Tubi. So
I was searching for Crimson Tide as well, and I couldn't find it on anything.
I looked for that one because I wanted my kid to watch it.
I think I might have found it. I think I might have found both of them on Amazon, but you had to pay like $3 or something like that to rent. And I'm like, it's $3 ain't that much, but still, I didn't feel like.
I know it's not, but it's the principle.
Exactly,
it's the principle of the thing.
Exactly. All right. So Steven wants to know when Corso is going to retire.
Question,
I mean, if Jimmy Johnson's going to retire, I lean toward it's probably time for Corso. I've always defended Corso's right, to kind of, but I think if Jimmy is gone, because Jimmy is definitely more coherent at this point than
it's not even close
than Corso. Yeah.
It's not even close. Jimmy is still very coherent in my opinion.
He
in
is.
Comparison. And look, Lee is also kind of a part-timer anyway. He doesn't stay on for the entire show. They kind of just roll him out there at the end. And like they've pretty much replaced him twofold, right? They replaced him with Saban and they replaced him with Pat McAfee. Like between the two of them, you got your Lee Corso. Like you got your old sage and you got your crazy guy. Like there it is right there. Like you don't.
John says Corso is the best. You can argue maybe he was the best. I think his best days are behind him at this point, though.
Yeah, he had an ample opportunity to get out of there during COVID when he was doing shows from like his pool. Like that was time to probably just hit the exit button, but it's okay. It's whatever.
Thank you for the super chat. JP says he loves how so many of our transfers played on teams we recently defeated. Riley Leonard and Mitch Jeter come to mind. Thoughts on this funny trend? Also, Notre Dame needs to claim those 11 other titles. I mean, definitely gives you a different chance to scout those guys when you've played against them and they're in the portal.
And it also gives an opportunity for those guys to scout you. I mean, they see kind of how your team is run, what it looks like, all of those different things. So, yeah, I mean, it is interesting how that works, right? Because you've got Malachi Fields was with Virginia, I don't know. I don't have a list of all the transfers in front of me. That's the one that comes to mind, but they didn't take a ton of transfers in this cycle. So, but yeah, JP, you're absolutely right.
Did play against Virginia last year. That's true.
Yep.
I hadn't really thought about it like that.
Yeah.
But again, you get a chance to see him. So,
yeah, and he's absolutely right because we played South Carolina with Mitch Jeter and we played obviously Duke. Notre Dame played both of those teams because recently before they came over.
When these coaches are putting together their scouting reports on these guys, you're looking at strengths, you're looking at weaknesses,
sure,
and all these different things. And these guys are going in the portal. And one of the jobs of that staff over there, like in that department, is as guys, who are going into the portal, or they are identifying potential guys who could go into the portal before, as the season is going along, before the season is over, they're identifying those kind of guys. So, again, like you've already got, a nice little database of information on them. So you've kind of got an idea of how they could fit with your team already.
Yep. Completely agree. When you can see it, and it makes a difference. Look, it makes a difference to see a guy in person. I mean, it just does. And when you scout them and you scout against them and your players go up against them, what your players do well and what they don't and what's taken away from them when they play certain guys, like all of that is part of it. You know what I mean? So I think it makes a lot of sense, to be perfectly honest with you. There's a reason Notre Dame went to the ACC both times they got their transfer quarterback, right? They saw those guys live and in person. They broke them down, all of that stuff, right? So, yeah, there's reasons for all this kind of stuff.
Where'd it go? Andre, he tweeted at me. He's going to be in Greensboro for the tournament this weekend. Nice. Glad to hear that, and I will see you out there. He wants to know where to buy tickets for the game. I mean,
probably
I can't give you much ticket insight. I know the box office will have some there, if they're not sold out, but I don't know. I mean, you can obviously go to the, to the ticket brokers and stuff like that, but you also might go to the ACC website and kind of see what they've got. I'm sure they've got some kind of ticket plans and all that.
Yeah, I would say go through the ACC and they'll probably send you to like Ticketmaster or something like that. But you can't go on Notre Dame's website. Doesn't have a link for tickets yet, even though they know they're playing in the 5 o'clock game, that day. Like there's no ticket link there. So my guess is, the ACC conference or the ACC website, go there. That would be my best bet. Click on the women, tournament, blah, blah, blah. And you'll probably be able to get it through them.
Yeah. Let me see if they've got anything up here.
Look at you doing the legwork. I did the legwork by going to Notre Dame's site, but that was it. So,
yeah. There you go. If you go to theacc.com and then like up at the top, there's a drop down for championships. Click on women's basketball. It'll take you to the women's basketball homepage, and there is a purchase tickets link right on there. So I would definitely get those in advance, because depending on like who they end up playing and stuff like that, those like Duke and NC State, North Carolina, those teams typically travel pretty well, obviously, since they're all there, in North Carolina. I know NC State will travel well, like if they were to end up playing NC State. That wouldn't be until the championship game.
Right.
But I would definitely do that. Get those in advance if you can. The arena is going to be pretty full.
Agreed.
All right. Well, that's going to do it.
Okay.
For today.
Andre,
all right. I will see you out there, Andre.
Love it.
Hit the like button before you leave, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.